Welcome back to another episode of Opalwave MTG, a channel dedicated to exploring power levels in EDH. This episode is going to round out our deck tech series for Liberator Urza's Battlethopter by featuring a really spicy cEDH brew by John from Spite Plays. And Spite Plays is a YouTube channel that is primarily competitive Magic focused. They do a little bit of gameplay, they do deck techs, they do card reviews. So John, how you doing? Thanks for joining.
I'm doing great. I'm excited to show you guys what I've been working with for the past couple weeks, because I guess I've been working with this for longer than then, because I didn't really know Liberator was going to be spoiled, but I've been working on something that would like fit this kind of shell for a while now, and I've been playing this deck and doing really well, and I'm excited to finally talk about it.
Yeah, and actually, that brings up a good point because I've played you in tournaments before, and you
Yeah.
were actually playing a version of this deck, but not Liberator. This was before Liberator was spoiled. You were playing
Yeah.
Hope of Ghirapur in, I believe it was a Chaos tournament. Chaos, like 3 or 2.
I think it was 3.
Yeah, it was probably
Yeah.
Chaos 3. And that it looked like a lot of fun. You were surprising a lot of people. So I guess with that, I kind of want to just start with that. What was that transition like, moving from Hope of Ghirapur to Liberator? Like, what were some of the key cards that you were like, oh, I can add this now because of this interaction? Like,
So I made a couple changes and just like making sure I had access to more mana, and putting in a couple things that would allow me to just play the instant speed game a little bit better. It's pretty cool though, because they're both pretty similar in the fact that, one, obviously they're colorless decks, right? And there's only like so much you can do with that. But two, they both don't like directly supply any value, and they're kind of these cards that you can use to get a little bit of, how would I say it? A little bit of advantage in the 4-player environment. How they go about doing that in the 4-player environment is different, as Liberator does it by just like playing stuff in between turns when people don't expect it to, and then Hope gets it by like using itself as a politic piece and using itself as a way to make sure it doesn't like die super early.
okay. I like it. Yeah, I think the flash, it adds a completely new element to these colorless decks that like
Oh yeah.
traditionally just kind of play like, very sorcery speed.
Yep.
But like now you're like, no, I can, you've got like a Yeva in the basically, right, for color.
Pretty
So
much.
seems sweet.
Yeah, and it's cheaper than Yeva and easier to cast. Obviously, you're
Yeah.
with no colors, that limits you in the cards that you can play. But
Right.
yeah, it's you get a whole new dimension that you get to play in. It's really cool. You're the secret blue deck of the table.
Exactly. So let's get into it with these Planeswalkers. Karn the Great Creator, Ugin the NFL, both of these make a lot of sense. The other Karns, like Living Legacy, this is not something I was expecting to see, gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
Seems decent.
So yeah, I'll break down this Planeswalker package real quick.
Okay.
I guess I'll start with the more dubious of the two. So with this deck, Liberator actually is just like a pretty damn good blocker. And there's only like so many good ways that you can get value in this kind of deck, in a colorless deck. And so I've found that these like just mid-rangey Planeswalkers have actually like done a fair job at letting you just like get ahead a little bit. These two do it in different ways. Living Legacy and making Power Stones is actually like pretty nice, as your curve on this deck is just astronomically high.
Okay.
Like the amount of, like, if you go down to the curve and look at it, we have 5 6 drops, 4 5 drops, 11 4 drops, a 9 drop, a 10 drop, and like 15 threes, which is absolute insanity for a cEDH deck.
It's awesome though. It's so
It is.
good.
It is
It's
really
so
awesome. Yeah, 65 of your cards in your deck are an artifact. It is. These Power Stones are tapping for almost everything, right? And that's really nice. The second ability on Karn Living Legacy is actually pretty relevant. You don't often like use it just to like try and dig for something. You can, but it does provide density and having infinite mana outlets. And that is something that the deck wants, as there's a bunch of ways that we wind up making infinite mana with this deck, and like finding something to do with it is really nice. So with Karn, we can just pay 100. Look at the 100 cards in our deck, take our Walking Ballista or our Staff of Domination or whatever, and just win the game, right? And then Karn, Scion of Urza, while the +1 and the -1 aren't great at getting you value, occasionally you can use it as like a political tool and be like, hey, I need this card so I can stop this guy, and so you can get the thing that you want immediately. But also just like making constructs is often a way that you'll win the game, because these things are going to be massive, and there's a lot of games where you don't have the time to develop your own game plan, and so you will just make you'll just make the game abysmal for everyone. And so you've made the game abysmal for everyone, and you're like, all right, I guess putting 10/10s into play isn't that bad of a thing when nobody can do anything.
That makes a lot of sense. I actually like the Karn Living Legacy being an infinite mana outlet. It's just like kind of blowing my mind right now. I think that's like super cool.
Yeah.
And then Karn the Great Creator, pretty straightforward. Great stacks piece for your opponent's,
it's just
artifacts.
much what it is. Your things don't get exiled very much. It's just like you gotta stop the damn docksides when you play this deck. Like
yes, yeah, exactly. And then Ugin, it's nice card advantage. It's removal. It's reduction. Like this is like kind of everything you want. Like staple in the Planeswalker, right?
It's mana, card draw, removal, but then it also like winds up being a combo outlet for when you have Mystic Forge and Sensei's Divining Top. So it's really just a stellar card all around.
I like it.
Yeah.
And then moving on to our creatures here, Conduit of Ruin looks really cool. I was talking about that in the battle version of the deck, where you get that cost reduction every turn.
Yep.
So great synergy with the
turns, I believe.
Yes, exactly. So
yeah.
And then Scrapyard Recombiner, another one that looks interesting. Some notable constructs that you want to be tutoring for: Scrap Trawler, Walking Ballista, Metal Worker, I believe, is a construct. Rug of Smothering, that's a construct. I like Rug of Smothering a lot. That actually seems pretty sweet.
It is pretty sweet. It's one of the ways you're able to at least put a thorn in these ad pause decks.
Right.
Rides. It won't stop them, but it's about just like not doing something that's like so egregious at first that everyone needs to like instantly deal with it.
So we got 2 Eldrazi's in the deck. Kozilek, great way to refuel the hand, and then it actually gives you that extra element of control by being able to discard those cards. So that seems like a really like.
Kozilek is a great piece in the deck. It's one of the pieces that like once you're looking to like close out the game, control the game, and finish it, you want to like, it's a card that you're very happy to see, because not only does it refill your hand and counter spells by discarding stuff, it's also just a 12/12 of menace. Which I don't think people talk about enough. Like closing the door is always talked about usually in the context of like pivoting to your combo win, but I think there are some times where you can like close the door with your creatures.
Exactly. Yeah, you get those the constructs and a Kozilek out, and then you're gonna maybe a Void Winter.
Yeah, Void Winter, which is also super sweet, covering virtually every win con right now. I've been in love with this card lately.
Card seems really good, and it's very hard to actually stop it once it's on the board.
No Dockside, no Rift, no Oracle, no Tainted Pact, no Underworld Breach. The list just goes on and on.
And then I see the thought knots here, and this actually is like genius to me, because it hits way more than I would think at first, because it has flash. Right? So like if your opponent Vampiric Tutors, and then
In
they,
their draw
at the
step.
end of their draw step, you flash in a
Yep,
Thought-Knot Seer.
you
Like,
sure
that's just,
can.
oh, that's so
Goodbye,
gross.
Oracle.
Oh my
You know
gosh.
what
I mean,
actually you
all of
can
the
do as
tutors.
well?
Holy cow.
You can actually, if you can find a way to remove it, you can make somebody draw a card in response to their process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even the same person that you ripped the card from. You can choose someone
Nope.
else.
You can choose somebody else.
Wow. This card's doing double duty. Rip a card
Yeah,
from someone's hand and make the Thoracle player lose. Like, it's...
Yeah, well, usually it's weird because you can't be you usually can't remove it yourself, but there's often times where somebody's sitting in there with a removal spell and it's just like, oh, this is useless for the Oracle. And it's like, hey.
Yeah. Then there's one less removal spell at the table.
Yeah.
The everything else kind of looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
I like Lodestone Goal. Your own, like you said, you got like 60 artifacts, so it's not really doing much.
Something I want to talk about a little bit that I think is notable is all of these cards that like require tapping become so much better in Liberator. Like you get to have Metalworker and just you just get to like not dump it in at sorcery speed and wait till like somebody's end step and be like, okay, surprise, I have a Metalworker.
Right.
And just get whatever you want. I have won multiple games so far by flashing in Kuldotha Forge Master on somebody's end step and getting any card in my deck for free. And it has been like absolutely disgusting.
That does seem pretty good.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, here's this creature that I'm going to flash in at instant speed. Can you deal with it? No? Okay, I'm going to untap and, like, get my infinite mana combo, and,
right.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of sorcery speed, we have no sorceries in the deck.
Yeah.
The only good one would be, like, the one that makes everyone sack everything, right? But
yeah, so I think it's playable with Liberator. I don't think it's like playable if you're not playing Liberator, but I still don't really like it because it is a 7 mana investment that gets countered by Swansong, Flusterstorm, Miscast, Dispel. Not Dispel, but it gets countered by all of those like super common counter spells. Which none of the rest of our deck does. So something that I see that is a common theme when I play this deck is that those like super common counter spells usually just like rot in players' hands, and are like only being used to stop like other fast players' decks, which is something that I want, right?
Yeah.
I want all those counter spells being thrown at each other, and when you play colorless, shit, you got to worry about like Fierce Guardianship, Force of Will, Force Negation, and that's mostly it, to be honest. There are like the occasional decks that are playing the 2 mana counter spells, but it is less and less these days.
And then we've got the instant package, some things that players can counter. We got Special Contortion, which, I mean, it hits everything, right?
Yeah.
So, it's great.
Gotta kill Oof. You don't see a lot of Oof.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. This, I'm not gonna say that like this deck. You don't have a lot of outs to Oof. It is the most abysmal card to play against.
Yeah.
You do have some ways to kill it. One of the most common things that you do in this deck is you just kind of hunker down, set up, and wait to play a bunch of stuff at instant speed when somebody else removes the oof, because often other people want to get rid of it. But finally, I'll say I don't. In like the online tournament meta, there is just not a lot of collector oof decks or null rod decks in general right now.
Yeah, a lot of proactive decks are going around right now.
Yeah, a lot of, and like mid-rangey decks, but decks that don't want to be like shutting off their own artifacts.
Right.
So you're luckily able to get away unscathed a majority of the time when playing this deck.
Fair enough. Then we've got a Warping Whale.
Yep.
Hits a decent amount of stuff. Countering Sorceries is cool. It's just flexible removal.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of flexible.
Random ramp if you really need it.
Yeah, sometimes you can like get a little ramp with it. You can counter like a demonic tutor or gamble for like somebody's breach or something.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, there's like a number of like sneaky stuff that you can exile that you wouldn't really like expect to be super relevant with this, and so I've liked it. Yeah.
Nice.
But it could be a card that I sub out in the future actually, because it isn't like great at doing any one thing.
Right, right, and it doesn't kill Oof.
Yeah.
All right, let's actually. So we got a whopping 51 artifacts in this deck.
Yeah.
Like you said, you increase the amount of mana ramp. Lots of ways to just power out all the big dumb things that get, well, not dumb, but you know, the big
No,
big
it's
chunky
okay.
boys.
You can say it. They're dumb. They're dumb. I will not take offense to it.
Ghost looks pretty smart. He seems like a pretty smart guy.
Yeah, I suppose.
A few stacks pieces, you know, dampening sphere seems really good. Ensnaring bridge. I'm sure this deck goes hellbent.
The cage effects. Yeah.
Yeah.
For a statue.
The portcullis is one that's coming. That's like sticking out to me a little bit. This seems like a card that you could play around pretty easily.
Yeah, portcullis in certain matchups is just insane. This card has been game winning for me in a number of matchups, and even though it like might not seem like it, you actually have like a number of ways to search for like certain artifacts in this deck. You have like a land package that can get you to your Inventor's Fair with your expedition map and whatnot. And
right.
You have like yeah, and so that's like a number of things, and you have like a number of like good ways to dig, and this card, I swear to you, is just like you play against Winota or Najeela and you will just be so happy that this exists. A number of the other like notable hate pieces that you play in the deck is I'm actually on 2 like top deck tutor hate cards, and then I actually played Lantern of Insight as a like politic power key, or a politic power piece that like lets people play around each other's things, and then you can play a little bit of Lantern Control once you have like multiple assembled. But the cards are also just like fine on themselves, and that's something you'll see in this deck, is that even though these cards are like, how do I put it? They're all like, okay, they're not all, but like traditionally most of these cards are just like pretty bad cards, right? But they all work together towards a pretty cohesive whole, and fill roles other than just like being one efficient piece at doing like one efficient thing. So the Codex Shredder and Pixis I'll get into like right now. These cards are pretty cool because not only do they like stop people's top deck tutors, but like Codex can get you back something, and there's often times where you'll like get wheeled by opponents. You want to like get back something big. You can mill yourself. You can also, when you're going off with Mystic Forge, you can use these shredder effects to like help yourself dig deeper so you can go further. Pixis is actually incredibly strong and people don't realize it. But this card, I picked it up recently, and this card is actually a win con, because look at this deck. How many permanents do you play, right?
Oh yeah.
You
like
play
the whole
2
deck.
non-permanent spells, and I guarantee your average CMC of your deck is far higher than any other deck you'll consistently run into. There may be like 2 decks that you can expect to like have to maybe like out edge you on the permanents they're putting into play once you activate this. But often I'll find it's just like a piece that sits there for a while. You get like a bunch of cards under it, you start untapping it with a key every turn, and then all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, I will I'll just activate this on whatever turn it is and put 7 permanents into play and just win the game on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Other people will be like, oh, I'll reveal a breach.
Yeah,
and a land and a bunch of instants.
Right. So yeah, and that's kind of like, you know, you were talking about the keys, or the Voltaic key specifically with the Rings of Brighthearth. Like, you can potentially just exile everyone's libraries.
Yeah, it's actually one of the ways that you wind up winning the game once you make infinite mana with the Rings of Brighthearth combo.
Mm-hmm.
Often, if you have a key out and if you have a Voltaic key and you have this out, you can just use the Rings of Brighthearth activation to give you 2 Voltaic key triggers, and then just like tap the Pixis infinite times by untapping the Pixis and the Voltaic key, and just like exiling everybody's decks.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that we play in this deck are the keys. We play Manifold Key and Voltaic Key. So these cards actually are really cool. They're really cool. I just said that, but they're really cool because they can like help you add a bunch of mana by like untapping your mana vaults and Grim Monolith and give you sustainable mana, as well as like being effectively a Mind Stone when you have your Soul Ring or Mana Crypt in play. But they can also just like give you double triggers on a number of your artifacts that you play. You can like activate, you can put 2 counters on your Ratchet Bomb. You can sometimes activate your Planar Bridge twice. That one's like a stretch, but you can activate your Mystic Forge twice. You can actually have weird combos with Rings of Brighthearth where you can copy the activation of your keys so you can get 2 untaps on your artifacts. You can untap your Sensei's Divining Top twice so you can draw an extra card per turn. Lots of little tricky things. You can even untap other people's artifacts so they can interact with each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was actually going to, sorry to interrupt you. I was gonna start talking about that Rings of Brighthearth interaction because that's actually one of your combos, right? So with Basalt Monolith plus Rings of Brighthearth, we make infinite mana.
Yeah, infinite mana combos. There's a bunch of them though, dude, and you don't even realize how many there are. I have a package that like makes infinite mana with my lands. And
oh yeah. Yeah, the Deserted Temple combo, right?
Yeah, the Deserted Temple, Scorched Ruins, and Rings of Brighthearth. That one's very funny.
I like that. That's a super sweet interaction. And then the rings is just I have those I had the rings combo in the battle version of the deck, and if you want to see that, I'll put that here. But you've also got the Forsaken Monument with the Basalt, which is another way to make infinite mana. And so these are like the more like straightforward. You said you had some crazier, or maybe not crazier, but some different, more.
Yeah, I have some. There's some weird like 4-card, 5-card combos that you don't really. I don't know if there are any 5. Or actually, I think there is. Yeah. That you don't really see at first, but that you kind of just walk into. One of the ones that you do is when you have Forsaken Monument out, and so you have your Forsaken Monument out. You have your Rings of Brighthearth. Then if you have a Voltaic Key and a Grim Monolith or Mana Vault, you can tap the Vault to make 4 mana, and then you tap the Voltaic Key, copying the activation for 3 to untap both the key and the Vault. And then that will make 4 and use 3 mana during the loop, and so you'll be able to generate infinite mana like that.
Nice.
That one's like pretty weird, and you don't see it all the time. You can also just do this with like any of your artifacts that make 3 mana.
Right, like themselves. Overflowing Chalice if you get there.
Yep,
Monolith.
Grand Dynamo.
Thran Dynamo. So in terms of like, I guess, non-infinite combos.
So you have Sensei's Top, Mystic Forge, and any cost reducer, which come down to Ugin and Cloud Key.
Okay.
Those cards are pretty good. And then, you also just like have like some like micro combos. These like mini combos that they don't win technically by themselves, but you just generate so much like either so much mana or so much like advantage with them that it's very unlikely that you're like not gonna win. Like one of the common ones is when I get Cart Clan Ironworks and Scrap Trawler out. If I have developed my board at all, like a fair amount, you can usually do some crazy stuff with that.
I think when you were still playing, it was actually in a tournament, or maybe we were just playing, I can't remember. But you had Cart Clan plus the Scrap Trawler, and then you started looping Moonsilver Key.
Yep.
That was gross, because you would like get Thran Dynamo, and then
I'll use that to go right back down the chain, and then get the Basalt, get the Moonsilver Key, which then gets the Soul Ring, and then the Mana Crypt, and then and then you do it again, and you get everything, and you can go just absolutely crazy with this deck. Even though I'm playing the Cart Clan Ironworks and Scrap Trawler, I am, however, not playing any of the Mirror Retriever effects.
Okay.
My reason for this is I've found that like the value in itself of like having these two is usually good enough, and like devoting a third card to try and get it to happen isn't great. And you don't often enough like have a way to remove your stuff that like just that like having a Mirror Retriever by itself is going to do anything. Your mana's perfect always. You don't have to deal with that. But beyond that, you get to have perfect mana while playing lands that all do something. Every land in this deck is either generating me value, tapping for extra mana, or being a piece of interaction. It's quite incredible how much you're able to do with all this. Like,
I was I was gonna just comment on what that last thing you were saying, where it's like you're trying, like what you were saying before, where you have to make sure that all of the pieces in your deck, since you're you only have X amount of the card pool to actually work with, you need to make sure every card is actually like contributing to your game plan, in addition to being some kind of like a part of this like Rube Goldberg that you're essentially setting up. and because of that, right, like since other people don't see that whole picture, they're not going to respect those individual pieces. But then by the time they see what the deck is going to do and they respect the deck, you're already winning, And so that shines even more so in the lands here. What you were saying, there's so much utility or extra value that's happening. Cavern seems really cool, since you just named Construct, I'm assuming.
It's almost always Construct. Construct are your like most important creatures in general. If you know you're gonna play a Kozilek or Void Winnower that turn,
I just named Eldrazi. Rishadon Port, tap down those guys cradles. Seems really good.
There's often times where just like tapping down a red can prevent a Dockside for a turn or something.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You can also like tap people out of interaction coming into your turn.
Yep.
You can stretch people's mana just a little bit so that Flusterstorm an opponent gets there, or that miscast, that Spell Pierce, whatever. Really sweet, right?
I like that. And then what's Vesuva and the Thespian stage? What are they copying?
So it depends. A number of times I'll just be copying my big mana sources, so I'll just like copy my Misha's Workshop and have 2 workshops and be super happy and giddy. But a number of other times, one of my favorite tricks to do in this deck actually is using like a Thespian stage to copy an Urza Saga. And I've won a couple games like this, where what you can do is you can copy your Urza Saga, which will then effectively, it gives you a second Urza Saga, but the thing that's super cool about it is that Thespian Stage will keep the chapter abilities when you change it to something else. So what I can do is I can use the Thespian Stage, turn it into Urza Saga, gain the ability to make constructs, and then once I go to Chapter 3, and that triggers on the stack for Chapter 3, I can actually change my my Thespian stage to a different land, keeping the ability to make constructs forever. In
And you got the
addition
tutor.
to getting another tutor, yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Vesuva is like a slightly less powerful version of this.
Right.
It you get like it's just a one-time copy something. But there's you have so many like lands that do cool things in your deck that just like having a second one and having a second Ancient Tomb, second Workshop, second Urza Saga for a turn is very strong.
The next one that I'm very interested to know why you have Yavimaya in here, and generally, it can be risky to run this card because you're turning on other people's, Arbor Elves, or like the Adnos player now doesn't have to ping themselves with their lands to make colored mana. So what's the...
So I would honestly actually recommend to the viewers that you probably don't want to play Yavimaya. I play it because it turns on like a number of things. Like there's often times that you're just like, okay, well I actually want to cast something that isn't an artifact with this Mishra's Workshop, or I want to cast something like that. But honestly, it's an out for Void Mirror, which some people in my personal meta have started
Okay.
to play.
Okay.
But yeah,
that's
I
big
would.
brain.
Yeah,
That's
it's
big
I
brain.
wouldn't play it. I would probably, if I were to just like move to another land to put in the deck, I would. I might just play Seagate Wreckage. It's like fine. I don't think it's like great either. You can also just put a waste in the deck if you're seeing like a lot of Beseiju. I'm actually not seeing a lot of Beseiju, but
Okay.
I think it's actually the safest to actually just put a waste in your deck, so you can at least like get a basic when you get, or excuse me, it doesn't trigger off Beseiju. You can't get a waste off Beseiju, but you can get it off of a trophy or a Path to Exile or something of the like.
Right, because it doesn't have a basic land type. It just says a
it doesn't
basic
have
land.
a basic land type, which
so
is
I mean, no matter what, you're not
but...
gonna get a land. So
yeah.
I mean, sometimes it happens.
Some people still play Trophy, and there's like a number, and there's some Path players in the world as well.
I think more people are getting onto Path now that we're moving towards like
there's
getting
also
a little bit
some
more creatures.
back to basics players in this world.
Oh yeah. Blood Moon doesn't hurt too much. I mean, you lose like a lot of the utility in your lands.
You lose the utility of your lands, but you can
now you play around
cast
Void
all your spells. Yeah.
You play around Void Mirror, rather, right?
Yeah, now you play around Void Mirror. Duh.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
You have Underdark Rift, which is a cool land that most nobody knows about. You can tap it for 5 mana, and you roll a d10, put target artifact, creature, or planeswalker into its owner's library beneath the top X cards, where X is the result of the d10. That is one of your outs to Collector Roof and Null Rod. Yeah.
Not a bad... I mean, it's not...
It's not a good one, though.
It's
it costs
colorless,
6 mana. It's not a good one.
You're in colorless. You take what you can get.
Exactly. You take what you can get.
And it's a land.
Sometimes you just like just having another removal spell is like all you need. Your Gaia Reach Sanitarium and Mikokoro to stop Oracle Consult.
Yeah, I like it. It looks like a sweet mana base. 29 lands seems like a decent number to be at, considering all the extra mana sources you have, and potential deck manipulation and card draw you can do.
I could go up to 30 or down to 28. It's I think 29 is like a good spot to because you are still like a Mystic Forge deck. You have a number of like deck manipulation and card draw, like you were just saying, but also you need to hit your mana because this deck is expensive.
It's expensive.
It's so expensive. Like, oh my gosh. But you play a lot of mana sources in your artifacts. And then a lot of your lands just tap for multiple mana, so it helps.
Right.
With that, but
so you're probably fine. But yeah, I think we're going to close up the deck tech there. It was really good to talk to you and hear your thoughts on the deck and see this really spicy brew. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, I guess like last thing I'll say is I don't know. It's colorless. It might not be. How do I put it? It is not the. It does not fit within the norms of what is good in this format. But I will tell you, um, give it a try. It is a lot better than you might think it would be. It is a lot better than you might think. For
I
all of
believe
you
you.
dubious people out there, I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but you can do a lot in this deck, and you can get your wins. And I'm not talking to
Yeah.
you, Opal, because I know you believe.
I've
Um,
experienced it. I
you've
believe.
experienced it, but
I believe.
and I totally understand the dubiousness because I've been there before. Um, and it's like there's like no reason this should work, right? Yeah, that's what led me here.
Nice. That's good. I mean,
Yeah,
like I
life.
honestly believe
Yeah.
that innovation is like key to like not only making this format like interesting, but also to just explore what this like tier or power level or whatever you however you want to look at it, like what it has to actually offer, like kind of just
Yeah.
breaking the regular and experimenting,
Oh
and,
yeah,
and it actually works.
I think experimenting is like I don't know, it's so key to just like learning, right? And I genuinely feel if you play this deck, it will just make you a better player, because you have to. It'll make you a better player at playing other decks because you have to learn a number of ways to play in like a 4-player format. Um, yeah.
I believe it. Nice. Maybe we'll get some. Yeah, we'll get some games in soon,
Hell
and
yes.
we get to see this deck first hand because I saw it when it was Hope of Ghirapur, but now it's better.
Now
So
it's better. Yes, even better. Can you imagine that?
I mean, it's only up from here, baby.
Yeah.
It's only up from here.
All right. Thanks for having
Uh,
me on, man.
yeah, thank you, and see you guys next time.